We had just found out about this camp. Whew, it's so bright this morning. My husband was working at a camp that he had worked at when he was a young adult. Oh my goodness, can y'all even believe this? Wow. The thing is, they have food out. I'm just gonna get them a little bit of dry food, but maybe they just want to be pet. Oh my goodness. Hello, little piggies. Hello, little piggies. I don't know, they're still squealing. And he was doing outdoor maintenance work and overseeing landscaping and special projects and things like that to get ready for last year's summer season there at camp. It was actually really similar to some thoughts I've had. It was so kind of cathartic. I think being out in God's world that He made is just refreshing. It's instructive. It's encouraging. At times when you're discouraged or you could be tempted to despair, not just about life, but even about God Himself, God's goodness, God's kindness, being out in the world that He made and seeing the things that He's done helps simplify what feels complex. Lucy, what you been doing?
I've been putting in stuff for the horses and stuff.
Yeah, putting in stuff for the horses.
And I'm washing buckets out.
Washing buckets out?
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you do, Theo?
I mostly pull the horses out of the pasture.
That's fun. So my husband had worked at that camp and started working as the maintenance person for the time being, and they knew he was looking for other work, but that also he could be happy to stay if there was a good long-term suitable position. They knew we needed housing, and he jumped on this camp website to learn more about just camp ministry and that kind of thing. And within, I don't know, days, I think, this camp from Washington wrote him and out of the blue said, "Hey, we saw your information posted on there. We saw that you recently lived in Washington. We wanted to see if you would want to apply. We just put forward this director position." And I was like, Washington again? Okay. And we were all super excited. That happened probably in March of last year. So he applied. We got super excited about it. All the kids did. We thought, wow, this would be perfect. We'd get to see our friends in Washington. We'd get to live near Mount Rainier, which we love. We hiked around it and just hiked on it a lot and spent a lot of time, spent birthdays and special days at Mount Rainier, and it became a special place for us. So we were going to be just on Whidbey Island, right across from Seattle, basically. And the camp was amazing. It was really cool. So he went through the process and he kept advancing. They kept wanting. So we thought, okay, this looks like how God is leading our family. And they invited us up for a 5-day interview on site. And so we got to go. We got to hike Mount Rainier one last time, which was really special. It felt like too much to bear to hope for it. And we went through the whole process. It felt like a really good fit, but we knew that there were some internal candidates, and we knew that they had 3. We just felt like, okay, whatever you're gonna do, God. But I did start to think, this seems so perfect. How could this not be it? We got home from Washington, and within 24 hours, we had an email from the owner of this camp saying, "Hey, I heard about you, and I've talked to some of our mutual friends, and we have a director position that we've just learned has opened up, and we wondered if you'd want to drive out here and have a conversation with us about it and potentially work as the director here. We're near Dallas, yada, yada, yada. And we were just bowled over. I mean, it felt like, you have got to be kidding me. We have gotten for 2 months almost, we had left Washington with such broken hearts that we were going to miss our friends, knowing it was the right thing, but really sad. And we had 2 months of starting to, at first it was really small. It was like, this is weird, I can't from Washington. And then it grew to where it was like, okay, they're flying us up. This is a big deal. And we started thinking, okay, we'll just, because all of our long-term belongings were still in Washington at that point. And so we thought, okay, we'll just have them drive 6 or 8 hours north, and that'll be that. And we'll bring our short-term little trailer back up to Washington. And we were already mentally there. We thought we were like 2.5 weeks away from getting word that he could be hired, and then we'd have a new life in Washington though. And so this just rocked me emotionally. It felt like this can't be the thing. Surely this isn't the thing. Not after we had just spent 5 days getting our heads around moving back to Washington. And it was such a whirlwind. Now, a year later, I can see with stunning clarity how kind God was to let us be here near my parents in a beautiful part of Texas, out just 30 minutes east of Dallas, but it's only an hour from where both Doug and I grew up. But it's such a special area where there's lakes, and there's even this, in the town that we're real close to, there's this lake with a bridge that we drive over, and it reminds me so much of driving into Portland, which we used to do all the time. I just see God's kindness all over this. But when we first got the email, I was like, this is crazy. This cannot be it. We didn't even want to stay in Texas, which, I mean, you'll see I've even got a Texas Rangers shirt on. We were both born and raised in Texas. We actually really love Texas, but we had come to love Washington, and we thought that that was where we wanted to be. And turns out God had different plans, and he always does. The adventures that he thinks up are different than the ones we think we're going to have. The stories he writes up don't end the way we think they should. And that kind of matches up with his whole story. Each story he writes is different, and each individual story, I've never met a person whose story has gone the way that they thought it would. And I think that can lead us to despair. It can lead us to bitterness. It can lead us to tragic places. I think it can lead us to doubt God, because we thought we were hearing him when he said this, and then he took us here and we don't get it, or this thing didn't work out the way we thought that it would. In fact, it blew up in our faces, or whatever. For us, it turned out that a year ago we were suddenly rocked back on our heels and making a totally different decision than we had anticipated making just days before. We thought our decision would be, if they invite us, will we move to Washington? Will we move away from family again? Will we take this job? Will we be up in an expensive part of the nation? Will we be in a state with a commie governor? And it turned out that God meant for us to be here in freedom-loving, business-friendly, hot, but still beautiful, and near family, Texas. And the other thing going on today in my head is we have this amazing church here. My husband's not a pastor anymore. He gets to pastor the summer staff every summer. which is great. This is going to be a really fun time for him this summer, of getting to encourage young adults and pour into them and just encourage them with the hope of the gospel. But today, I can't believe I'm going to cry, but it feels really thrilling. It's the first day we get to be back with our church family in person. So we get to meet this morning. We get to worship together, being encouraged by God's word every week, having pastors that care for our souls and want to encourage us not toward doing, but towards knowing God. It's been such a gift. You know, through all of the leaving Washington, my soul went through a period of dryness and sorrow and loss. And you can't not feel that when you lose such dear in-person friends, face-to-face friendships, and you lose familiarity. But what God has done since then has blown my mind, and even still it's been hard to have faith. But I do see all that He's done, and this time of COVID, of not being able to worship, has shown me how much I need that weekly time with my church family so that I don't lose heart. I'm excited. Tiny pancakes for Sia.
I just made some food for sure. Okay, so that's 4. 1, 2, 3.